Hey everybody, John Manuel and Jim Shonerd here with you on another Baseball America Google Plus Hangout. Thanks for joining us. I'm obviously working at home. Jim Shonerd is the Baseball America. Well, I used to call it the podcast nook, Jim, but now it's like our multimedia nook with our. It's fancy. We got the screen, we got the green screen.
We have technology and stuff.
Yeah, technology and stuff. Indeed, I will be playing the role of Chevy guy today. Hopefully, not stumbling over my words that much, but. Have my little. You have the BA stuff. I have a little Greek stuff over my shoulders here, and the worst window treatment ever that my wife and I have not gotten rid of. One of the reasons I'm here is all the snow, Jim. Obviously, weather has been a huge factor in college baseball. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll take your questions if you're watching live. You can send those to us via Twitter. I'm at John Manuel BA. He's at Jim Shonerd BA. And Jim, it's just, the story's getting old. Next week, a lot of conferences start conference play. And I was talking to a college coach yesterday, just talked about, usually by this time, you're hoping that you're finding the identity of your team. You're figuring out what your rotation is going to be. You're figuring out what your lineup's going to be in your bullpen, kind of your pecking order in your bullpen. And for a lot of teams, they just haven't played enough games, really, to get to that point yet. And with schedules so scrambled, I think it's just hard to evaluate teams to this point. Is that the sense kind of that you're getting when the coaches you're talking to?
I think so. Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I talked to Andrew Checketts from UC Santa Barbara for weekend preview this week. He kind of rubbed it in that about the weather they're having out there, and now we're snowed in over here. But yeah, I mean, everybody's having to scramble just to find a place to play. I mean, there are teams that aren't. Teams that, in North Carolina and Virginia, teams like that are probably not used to having to spend 3 weeks on the road. Now they're having to do it. I'm sure the northern schools aren't have any sympathy for them, but they've only got all these teams that are losing games left and right. They've only played 5 or 6 games, and like I said, there's no one. It's been tough to. They're not even getting to practice and all that. They're just having to try to find a place to. They're spending all your time on a bus trying to find a place to play, and it's tough to find out what your rhythm, get your rhythm going, and just kind of, find roles for everybody.
I think every college baseball player who's been impacted by this weather, it's mostly teams on the East Coast and the Midwest, the upper North, the teams that are not used to dealing with it, like you said. A lot of northern teams are used to it. They're all tired of hitting the cage. I think their coaches are very tired of their players just being in the cage. And two of the coaches I talked to this week both said they estimated they've gotten in about 30% of their games and practices since the start of the practice, which was late January. And it does beg the question, JJ, you see how used I am talking to JJ Cooper, Jim. It begs the question about this Randy Mazey proposal that's been floating out there. He's certainly not the first person to make a proposal to change the college season and move it back. I want to get some of your thoughts on just the idea of moving the season back. I'll say that I've gone around and around on this issue over 18 years at BA. I'll keep reminding everybody how old I am. I've been here this long. But, I see both sides of it. I do think it's reactionary to this year's weather to be so strident about moving the season back. And I do think if you try to move the start date back to March 1st, you might lose a lot of games. I'd be okay if college baseball wanted to move back to March 1st if they had games that counted in the fall. I didn't realize that softball plays games that count in the fall if they want to. I know there are seasons like track that have competitions both in fall semester and the spring semester. But moving baseball season to summer, during summer school, that would be very, very different for what college athletics do. And I had one coach tell me this week, let's just remember, this is college baseball. This is not pro ball. And he fears that basically kind of like a getting too big for its britches kind of deal with college baseball if they try to move a season and have games that, regular season games in June and July when colleges are are not in session. And a lot of schools don't offer summer school. A lot of them do. I do think that the idea of moving the season back, frankly, is kind of more of a have and have-nots conversation again in college athletics. And that's dangerous to me, the have and have-nots conversation. I don't know if you do it in baseball. It's one thing in football for the Power 5 conferences to split off and have autonomy. If you do it in baseball, excuse me, you're losing out on programs that are big-time programs like Cal State Fullerton or Wichita State or Pepperdine. These are all schools that have won national championships in the last 25 years. Stony Brook, is Fresno State 2008 champion. They have football. Are they going to be in the haves or the have-nots? Because they're not in a Power 5 conference. Are you going to really squeeze all these national championship caliber programs out? Are you going to squeeze out Kent State and Stony Brook, these great stories? I think you have a danger of doing that because I think it's much more plausible for the Power 5 conferences to move their season back into the summer than it is for all 300 or so Division I baseball schools to move their seasons back. So I'm afraid that this might wind up being a wedge issue that divides college baseball rather than unites it.
Yeah, I mean, one of my thoughts has always been that if you move the season back even just a couple weeks, then you'd get out from under the shadow of basketball. Because right now, when you get conference play starting when March Madness is going on, so your casual college sports fans aren't going to even catch on to baseball until the season's more than half over, probably. But so that's always been something I've thought as a reason to move it back at least a couple weeks. I don't know that it's. I've never been a fan of having games that count in the fall. I don't know. I just didn't. To me, that just doesn't seem all that logical to have games that count, in September or something, and then not have any more until for 4 months or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be. To me, it doesn't sound like it will ever have the baseball season be completely divorced from the academic year. I just can't really see that happening. But yeah, if they moved, because I mean, there have been years where it feels like this year the weather has been just the worst I can remember. I know you've been tracking more of these seasons than I have. I can't remember one that's been this screwed up every week in so many different places. So like I said, you don't need to be reactionary and move the season back a month or whatever. But I would be in favor of at least. I mean, even 1 week would make a difference, and probably 2 would be even better. But yeah,
I do think what's happened, Jim, is that we have noticed more now because these things get moved more because college baseball teams have more money, frankly. I think in the past a lot of these series just would have been canceled or played in the cold. And you wouldn't have Oklahoma, BYU relocated to Las Vegas, which cost Oklahoma like $40,000 to move that series, to switch that series, or NC State and UNC Greensboro and Charlotte all had their series, the Irish Classic canceled, all this kind of stuff. They moved to Savannah, Georgia, because they have the money to do it. Or North Carolina, UCLA last weekend. I don't think that happens. Even 5 years ago, I don't know if that happens before UCLA won a national championship and spent more money on baseball. Or 10 years ago before North Carolina had been to Omaha 6 times. I don't think that happens. I don't think these administrations put up the money. So that's why I tweeted during the week. I really respect the coaches. One of the guys I talked to yesterday said that he'd been on the phone like between 75 and 100 calls and text messages to try to reschedule and set up. And some schools, one school I was told couldn't make a weekend series, couldn't change plans because it was an extra $5,000 to rent a bus. And
Wow.
that precluded them from getting games in this weekend. Their administration said stay home, try to clean up the field, and play at home. And that's the difference to me, is that schools have more money to make these kind of changes. And so let's get to actually on the field. Just got an email, Jim, you may have just gotten it too. TCU, Cal Poly, one of the series. We have 2 kind of Big West, Big 12 series that are on my radar, with Cal Poly traveling to TCU, Cal State Fullerton, and Baylor playing this weekend. And the Cal Poly TCU Friday game has been canceled. Going to try to do a doubleheader over the weekend, but I see the Cal Poly release at least says, well, we'll see if we can do this because our the weather schedule says, the forecast says 31 degrees Saturday and a possibility of snow. So we'll see if they even get those in. But those series piqued my interest, and I guess the big series of the weekend is obviously South Carolina Clemson. It's the biggest rivalry in college baseball. I don't think that the weather is going to really impact that series. It looks like forecasts in the Palmetto State are cold but clear. South Carolina's really dominated the series in recent years. Jim, what's your take on the Gamecocks and Tigers? It feels like every year the more South Carolina dominates it, the more Jack Leggett really needs to win a series like that to have a little bit more positive momentum in his program.
Yeah, it definitely feels like there's a lot more pressure on Clemson than South Carolina. I mean, it's what has it been 5 years since Clemson won that series. I know they got swept last year. Had a very painful loss on Sunday, and that at home, and that to finish that series. And I mean, there's all this. We kind of had all that, a lot of stuff swirling around that program at the end of last year with where they finished really poorly, and now so they stumble out of the gate this year, losing that series at home to West Virginia, and now I mean, winning if they win this series, I think that would do wonders just for the morale around that team. If they could get this monkey off their back, keep losing to the Gamecocks, that's got to be. I can only imagine how old that is for them. And I mean, I mean, they're pitching well. I mean, we saw also they got Crown over in Irvins. That's a good one too. But let's see if they can hit. They hit last week, but that was against Maine. Will Crow's not pitching for Maine, so
That's a great way to put it. And
but
Will Crow's now pitching on Fridays for South
yeah,
Carolina, which
I'm
seemed
a big fan of Will Crow too. So
it seemed inevitable that he would do that. And I just I think we wrote about it I know we wrote about it because I wrote it in 2013. But at high school, we've seen this a couple times in the volunteer state, in the state of Tennessee, where you have these classes of talent. And in 2004, the high school class was guys like David Price, Kyle Waldrop, Matt Spencer's another name I remember, and there are a couple others. Obviously, David Price, Waldrop signed, made the major leagues, but really wasn't an impact player. But obviously, David Price was and helped really change things at Vanderbilt. And that class of 2013, the state of Tennessee, whether it's Hayden Stone or Dakota Hudson or Will Crow or Kyle Serrano, all those guys all pitching in the SEC on weekends. That's another big intersectional rivalry, not rivalry, but series with Tennessee this weekend out in UC Irvine, out at
yeah,
Dave Serrano's old stomping grounds. UC Irvine, one of probably the team we've talked about the least. That was an Omaha team a year ago, and it's clearly lost a lot of key players from last year's team, whether it's Taylor Sparks, whoever you want to, Andrew Morales, whoever. But it's still pretty, that's a pretty good series to watch this weekend. It's a good measuring stick for Tennessee, but I'm very interested in seeing just how Will Crow and the rest of those now sophomores from that state of Tennessee. We saw the impact Hayden Stone last year had for Vanderbilt in their bullpen. That'd be a fascinating group of players to watch for 2015. Jim, you mentioned that series kind of being one of the key ones, and you also talked to Andrew Checketts. I talked to him also this week. That was another series that stood out to me. I like that UCF Ole Miss series is one that jumps out a little bit to me, and then that Oregon Santa Barbara series. What else around the country kind of grabbed your attention? What else are you going to be watching that maybe wasn't focused on in Weekend Preview, which is on live at BaseballAmerica.com now?
Oh, we've got Stanford and Rice playing this weekend, so those are two marquee programs. We'll see if Stanford kind of stumbled out of the gate with their lose at home to Indiana opening weekend, but then they go to Fullerton last week and win that series. So now they're back on the road again this weekend. See if they can pick up another marquee win and series win that is. And for Rice, I mean they go out to they split that 4-game with Texas, and now they go to Arizona and win last week. So that's our two regional teams we had pegged in the preseason. Obviously, Rice is, as always, the favorite in Conference USA, and so that'll be interesting to see if how Stanford can if they can keep going. Obviously, that's going to be a lot of pitching to watch in that series rather, with Cal Quantrill and company on one side and Kevin McCann, Blake Fox, and all of Rice's guys. So that'll be a low-scoring series, but and then the other one I kind of touched on in Weekend Preview was UNC Wilmington going down to Florida State.
I like that one. That was a good one to call out because Wilmington is really off to a good start.
They are, and I wish they could have gotten to play Kentucky week 1. That was another weather casualty, but so they do have 2 wins against an ACC team in Wake Forest. Obviously, Wake Forest isn't Florida State, but also we like the Seahawks. We like the way they do things in general. And the Noles, they gotta get going.
Right.
They kind of had some adventures in that Week 1 series with Oakland, and then they go up and lose to Georgia, which isn't it's not a terrible series loss, but it's one would like to see them win. And they gotta give DJ Stewart some help. He's kind of been a one-man band in that offense.
Which kind of is how things looked coming into the year. You kind of wonder where the support was going to come from for him, and then their pitching hasn't materialized either. Really hasn't coalesced around exactly who you kind of thought it would be. Like Brian Holtman, you thought would be a member of the weekend rotation. He's throwing midweek right now. Kobe Johnson was a big deal recruit for them. He hasn't. He struggled last weekend against Georgia. I'll tell you, when you watch Florida State, I got a chance to watch them last week against Georgia on the SEC network. Pretty startling to see just how unphysical that team is on the mound. Yep. It's tall, but a lot of real skinny players. I'll throw you this bone, Jim. They reminded me a lot of North Carolina's basketball team with all those skinny bodies that I saw getting pushed around Wednesday night by your Wolfpack. So you can gloat for a minute. I'm going to give you a chance to gloat if you want.
They need a BJ Anya in there. They need what was the guy the big guy with the mustache? He was their BJ Anya. I forget his name now, but
Florida State's usually had pretty physical pitchers. Some big guys. Scott Seitz, I think, was the pitcher you're talking about.
That's the guy. Seitz, he was their BJ Anya. They need him back.
That's a good comp. 9 inches shorter, maybe a little bit shorter arms, but the same degree of physicality. Let's take a couple of questions over the Twitterverse where I'm getting mocked by Mississippi State fans for not knowing that it's called Stark Vegas. Of course I know it's called Stark Vegas. I just didn't know the school refers to it to Starkville as Stark Vegas. Every small town is blank Vegas. I mean, Greenville for East Carolina is Green Vegas or whatever, Tar Vegas. I mean, everybody's Vegas. I get it. I just didn't know the school referred to it as Stark Vegas in the notes, so that just blew my mind. But we do have a question from Paul Norwine, who's an Indiana college baseball fan. I don't mean the school, I mean the state. He flew from snowy Indiana to see Purdue against Arizona State and Northwest Indiana coaches Tracy Smith and Doug Schreiber. Your thoughts on Purdue and the Sun Devil teams so far? And the quick version on Purdue is, it's difficult for any school in their weather situation to be consistently good. Clearly, Purdue had that year a couple of years back. I guess it was 2011 now. The Kevin Plawecki, Cam Perkins year. Was that 2011 or 2012, Jim?
I'm pretty sure that was 12.
Yeah, I think it was 2012. Now that you mention it, I can't believe it's 2015 already. Time flies when you're old. But that they had that momentum as a program, and it's difficult to sustain when you're in West Lafayette, Indiana. My cousin who went there is very frustrated that they didn't maintain their momentum. And they're allowing opposing hitters right now to hit 340 against them. A lot of that damage was done by Western Carolina. But just in their own preseason, Purdue picked itself to be a bottom third of the Big 12 team. That's how I assess them. And it's really more of a growing kind of year for this program and trying to get back rather than it's a destination year for this program. But I feel it's the same thing at Arizona State, Jimmer, but I'll tell you, the early returns on Arizona State under Tracy Smith's management are very, very positive. And I feel like whether it's travel ball coaches I talk to in the West or guys in pro ball, scouts, that kind of thing, or college coaches out West, they really, really are very high on the Tracy Smith era beginning at Arizona State. And there's a swagger that's returned to that program that was absent the last 5 years. And it's going to be back, and so is the talent level in Tempe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I talked to Coach Smith before the season, he mentioned how they weren't as athletic and physical yet as he wants them to be, but he liked the way their recruiting is going so far. But I mean, you take 2 out of 3 from Oklahoma State, who we really like, and they pushed TCU hard last weekend. In between, they beat Oklahoma in a midweek game, so they go 4-3 in the Big 12 to start the year, and now they're stepping out of conference to play this weekend. But yeah, I mean they got pushed hard by Cal State Bakersfield last week, and ended up pulling that one out on a walk-off single by Jordan Aboitis. But I obviously Colby Woodmansey is a guy that has got some physicality at shortstop. He's a breakout candidate, and certainly got with him between him and Jake Peavyhouse, they have two great names in their lineup, and and we obviously they're pitching. I mean, Lilac and Kellogg are both great arms, and Ryan Bird at the back of the pen's got a great arm. So I mean, they've got a lot of pieces to work with, and and we've also you and I we've talked in the office about you got Colton Gearhart in their lineup, kind of going to work in there, a freshman who's the younger brother of Toby, former Stanford two-way star, and yes, and obviously R.J. Barr is off to a great start, Johnny Seawald, but yeah, I mean they could already hit the guys they had last year, and now they're gonna now obviously they're gonna just keep building it. The talent level is gonna keep rising. Where they've kind of have good, they're more of a good college guys right now, but I think they're gonna be back on their way up. I think that's pretty safe to say.
And the other good news is Tim Esme and his son are both landing on their feet. They're coaching now in the Chicago White Sox organization, and they're actually, I believe, both going to be in North Carolina this year. I think one in Winston-Salem and one down in Kannapolis. So, good to see that. And you hate to. I believe it's fair to say that I was an outspoken critic of Tim Esme's regime there at Arizona State. I didn't think he was up to the task there. Obviously the administration wound up agreeing with me. I think the facts on the ground agreed with me. But I mean, he's a good baseball man, and Arizona State has expectations, and you also have pressures. Yeah, it's a program that won 5 national championships from 1967 to 1981, and that's the expectation level there. And all the success Pat Murphy had there, he was always under pressure every year from the Jim Brock partisans, from the Bobby Winkles partisans, and those fans who remember that. And Tracy Smith, I think, has the audacity, frankly, to expect a national championship at Arizona State. He had the audacity to take Indiana to the College World Series, and I think he has that just the dynamism, he and his staff there, to get Arizona State back where they want to go. And I think that's a program that kind of needs that dynamism. So I'll actually be out there next weekend in Arizona, Jim. I'll be going down to Tucson to see the Wildcats. I think that there's a spring training event I'll be doing with some big leaguers in downtown Scottsdale. I'm pretty excited about. We'll have more details about that next week at baseballamerica.com. And obviously a big weekend. Yeah, big weekend for everybody, because next weekend conference play starts in a lot of places. And really the 2 best tournaments in the country are next weekend that you and Michael and Anna will be at.
I'll be in Houston for the Houston College Classic with obviously Houston, LSU, A&M, Nebraska, Baylor, and Hawaii are the teams there. Obviously the Houston and LSU are the headliners, and those 2 play Friday night. That'll be very exciting. I can't wait to get there. I can't wait to, I guess, as I said on the podcast this week, I can't wait to go to games in a dome. Just taking no chances. But then Mike will be in LA with Vandy and TCU and UCLA and the Trojans. So that'll be a great weekend for him, and so we're really excited to just get to watch games wherever they are.
And that's it. A lot of these were already planned, but first weekend of March, we'll miss the Duke North Carolina series if Michael Machuel is healthy. I mean, I'm sure we'll have someone here from the office who'll be there, but the 3 of us will get the luxury of going to weather-advantaged places next weekend to watch some quality college baseball and get in the mood. It's been hard to get in the mood when it's covered with snow, and I actually tried to do this hangout out on my deck in the snow, and it just too wet, too melty, and I don't have, my son's not old enough to clear that space quickly enough as he needs to be. I thought he had a growth spurt here at 10, and he'd be a little bit more physical to go out there and clear space for his old man, but he wasn't able to do that yet, Jimmer. So lesson learned. We had to do it inside, but good stuff, Jimmer. Good stuff talking to you. Enjoy your college baseball weekend, and we hope everybody out there watching enjoys theirs. All of our college baseball coverage is, as usual, sponsored by Louisville Slugger. Check them out on Instagram @SluggerNation or on Twitter @SluggerNation. Check us out on both those venues as well, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And Jimmer, follow him all weekend @Jim Shonerd BA. I'm @John Manuel BA on Twitter, and we'll see you next week on the next Baseball America Google Plus Hangout. Until then, so long, everybody.